The story took place on June 16th, 2019. That day, my girlfriend told me that her room inexplicably had a smell of blood and asked if I knew what was going on. My girlfriend had recently returned to her hometown and felt that her room inexplicably had a smell of blood. And what's more terrifying is that the smell became stronger at night. On the third night following the strange smell, my girlfriend also inexplicably encountered paranormal phenomena. A group of people covered in blood stood by the bed, staring at her relentlessly. She told me that at that time she was clearly awake, but her body just couldn't move. What's even more puzzling is that the house itself is my girlfriend's old house, and this smell is only in her room. The other rooms are all fine. After hearing her tell me about these strange experiences, I gently comforted her, saying it might be metal corrosion or water leakage in the room, or perhaps it was the smell from her menstrual period. I hypothesized many guesses to tell her not to think too much, and not to think of everything in terms of ghosts and monsters. But she denied all these answers. A few days later, my girlfriend told me that things seemed to have become more terrifying and incomprehensible. Her home is in a desolate town, and the house was built by her own family years ago. Since she returned to her hometown, she first inexplicably smelled the scent of blood, then had the same nightmare repeatedly for several days, and then was surrounded by ghosts. During that time, to comfort my girlfriend, I would make video calls with her every night to coax her to sleep. On the fourth day of our video calls, something terrible happened. My girlfriend suddenly told me that she smelled the scent of blood again, and then suddenly became very sleepy. Before I could finish speaking, she seemed to have fallen asleep. Her expression also became very fierce, always frowning, and then she closed her eyes and shed tears. At that time, I thought something had happened, so I called her name loudly, but no matter how I called, she couldn't wake up. In short, it felt very wrong. However, what happened next was even more terrifying. She didn't speak, and the other end of the phone was very quiet. Suddenly, a very hurried footstep came from my girlfriend's phone, and the sound was getting louder and louder, as if someone was running around in her room. Then her expression became very painful, repeatedly shaking her head, as if she was avoiding something. I, who was guarding on the other end of the phone, was undoubtedly the most worried, but also felt very scared. I quickly imitated the experience from a Buddhist book I had read before, and recited the 6-word Great Right Mantra, which is used to exorcise evil spirits. But the strange thing was that every time I recited it, the footsteps would stop and then start again. When I recited it again, the footsteps stopped again. After repeating this many times, I suddenly heard a very harsh sound wave, which scared me. Finally, I fell asleep in this special frequency of sound waves until I woke up the next day. When I asked my girlfriend about last night's events, she knew nothing about the strange sounds that appeared yesterday. She just had a nightmare after she fell asleep, still dreaming about a group of people covered in blood surrounding her, pulling her with their hands. At that time, I felt that the whole thing was very wrong and told her to go to the nearby temple to worship, or find a master who studies the supernatural field to help. But she didn't believe in these supernatural phenomena and just casually perfunctory my words. Because my girlfriend never believes in those supernatural events, when I asked her at night, she still didn't go. However, she told me that when she went to town to buy things during the day, she met a Buddhist who took her car. But since she left her hometown when she was very young, she basically forgot the local language. So she didn't understand what the Buddhist said all the way. But when she got out of the car, the Buddhist gave her 3 things: a small silver medal, a green emerald elephant, and a pill. After hearing this, I felt that the reason why the Buddhist gave her these 3 things was that he saw something. I told her to put those 3 things under her pillow when she went to sleep and see if there would be any reaction. That night, I still kept the video call with my girlfriend. We chatted for a while and she fell asleep. But this time after she fell asleep, her expression was very normal, without the pain and fierceness of yesterday. When I thought the matter seemed to be resolved, the familiar footsteps came again from her mobile phone last night. But this time the direction of the sound was obviously not in the room. It seemed to be outside the room, not as clear as yesterday. And it lasted for about 2 minutes and then disappeared. As the only one who witnessed this matter, I felt very scared because I felt that the sound at that time seemed to want to enter her room, but it couldn't get in. The next day, when my girlfriend woke up and told me that she still had a nightmare, it wasn't as terrible as before. It felt like those people were in a very dark place, always talking in her local language, which means little girl. After I heard it, I was still a little worried and let her take good care of the green emerald elephant given to her by the Buddhist. And it's best to go to the temple to see what's going on. However, she still didn't care and perfunctorily me until a strange thing happened that night, and she really had the idea to go to the temple to have a look. This strange thing happened when we were video chatting that night. She ordered food online, and since the light on the first floor of the house was broken, she was a little scared to pick up the takeout. So she let me accompany her for the whole video chat. When she came back with the takeout, my girlfriend suddenly screamed and shouted my name. At that time, I was scared silly, thinking something had happened to her. So I hurriedly asked her what happened, but no matter how I shouted, she didn't respond. It wasn't until a while later that the video screen became bright, and I saw her return to the room and asked what had happened. At this time, she replied that when she was walking up the stairs just now, she kicked something furry, which seemed to be a cat. But the strange thing was that after kicking the cat didn't leave, but stood in front of her motionless, as if deliberately blocking her and not letting her go forward. At that time, she felt very scared in her heart, and after experiencing a series of inexplicable things, she was really scared. Although she is an atheist, when many things really happened to her, she still had to believe. The next day after getting up, she told me that she was going to go to the nearby temple to have a look, and she didn't know what was going on. But suddenly, her waist was very painful. In the afternoon, she found a friend to accompany her to a famous temple in the local area. My girlfriend said that when she just walked into the temple, the abbot of the temple drove her out and told her to stand outside for 2 minutes before letting her take off her shoes and socks and kneel in the main hall. Afterwards, the abbot told her that before entering the temple, there was a ghost of a man without legs hanging on her. But fortunately, the other party had no ill intentions and just wanted to follow her into the temple, which was why she was asked to stand outside for 2 minutes just now. Then the abbot recited the Buddhist scriptures for her and hit her head with the scriptures, telling her to pay attention at night when she went back and see if there were any abnormalities, and he would pray for her in the temple. The whole process of my girlfriend's conversation with the abbot was also translated by her friend, and indeed, since my girlfriend came back from the temple, she has never encountered those strange things again. As for her seeing a group of ghosts covered in blood, later learned some things from her sister. According to her sister, there were several incidents of wild dogs attacking people near their house a few years ago, and it seemed that 7 or 8 people were bitten to death. The people her sister saw should be those who were bitten to death at the time. And then, just when I thought the matter had been resolved, a more terrifying thing came. At that time, when my girlfriend went to the temple, she also asked for a talisman that had been placed under the statue for 24 years on my behalf, saying it was called Rihula. The locals told my girlfriend that this Rihula is to block disasters for people, and it is very rare. Many people want to get it, but can't, and it is determined by fate. I have been thinking, why did the abbot give me a Rihula? And it has been placed under the temple's main statue for 24 years. If there had been no such supernatural events before, it would be fine. But after experiencing the strange events that happened to my girlfriend, I became very sensitive. I told my girlfriend to ask if I would have any major disasters, otherwise, why would the abbot give me such a valuable thing? And when my girlfriend went to the temple again to ask about my situation, she also asked the abbot if her own issue was perfectly resolved. However, the abbot told her that the previous matter was resolved, but within 3 months she would definitely encounter other supernatural events, possibly involving karma and past lives. As for what it was, the abbot said he couldn't see clearly at the moment. When my girlfriend told me about this at night, I felt something was off and immediately asked her to place the items given to her by the Buddhists she met on the road under the statue, just in case they might have some effect. But then something strange happened. She found that the Buddha statue at home had disappeared. After searching the house all day, it was gone, as if it had vanished into thin air. After the Buddha statue disappeared, my girlfriend was terrified and decided to go to the temple to look into her past and present lives, wanting to understand what was meant by karma and past lives. Upon arriving at the temple, the abbot asked my girlfriend again if she really wanted to see. After receiving a definite answer, he had her kneel in the prayer hall, then closed the door, left, and began to chant scriptures. According to my girlfriend, after kneeling on the ground for a few minutes, something magical happened. She was very clear that she was in the temple, but her consciousness began to blur, and the scene in front of her changed, as if watching a movie. She saw things from a first-person perspective that were hard to accept. She saw a person tied up, and then she cut open that person's skull, poured something in, and ignited the skull. Many people around were dancing. Later, the abbot came in, and my girlfriend came to her senses. Just as she was about to tell the abbot, he said he had seen everything. Then he told my girlfriend to leave, saying he couldn't help her and that everything depended on her fate. After hearing what my girlfriend said, I also thought it was exaggerated. After all, this is a scientific society. If I hadn't been with her through all this, I wouldn't have believed it. And so many days passed, and during that time, I also looked for many masters in the study of supernatural fields in other places, but none of them could provide any useful information. But until more than a month later, when my girlfriend returned to the city where I was from her hometown, she lived with me. During this period, two more strange things happened. The first time was one night when we were sleeping. My girlfriend suddenly screamed and said someone was talking in her ear. At that time, I comforted her on purpose, saying she was too sensitive and had heard wrong. 2 or 3 days later, I was insomniac and reading a novel when I suddenly heard a sigh in the room. At that time, I thought I had heard wrong, but when I turned off my phone and prepared to sleep, I clearly heard that sigh again, very close, as if it was emitted beside me. The second thing was in October, when the abbot suddenly found the friend, who had accompanied my girlfriend to the temple at the time, and asked that friend to pass on a message to my girlfriend to light an oil lamp. When she returned home at night, she should not turn on the lights in the bedroom. If she heard someone knocking on the door, she should not speak or open the door. During that time, the two of us were also very sensitive about this matter, and a little bit of wind and grass scared us a lot. Until the fourth day after the abbot had given us instructions, that voice appeared. That night, my girlfriend and I had just fallen asleep when we heard a knock on the door. I looked through the peephole of the door and did not see anyone. In the empty corridor, the strong knocking on the door beat again and again, and in the quiet room, the two of us hugged each other tightly. The sound lasted for about 3 or 4 minutes, and there was no shouting or talking, just a terrifying silence, so quiet that we could hear each other's breathing. In this way, the two of us fell asleep in our arms, and as for who was knocking on the door that night and what they wanted to do, I don't know. Since that day, I have broken up with my girlfriend, and I'm not quite clear about the ending of the story. A few years after our breakup, I heard some news about her, and she has become a patient with severe depression.